can totally see both sides, and I actually totally agree with the part about speakers. I think allowing speakers to come on campus, even if they have like really radical viewpoints, is super important to us. But I think in those contexts, like students have a choice of whether they can go to those or not. Like it's not, forced that they're going to have to go to that and have to sit through that. What I'm worried about is like people who have trauma and have suffered from trauma and like them being triggered by something and having a panic attack in class or something like that. And if that does really bother them, then they can choose to step out of that situation, that kind of protest or like big event or whatever.
The first article we'll be taking a look at is written by Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt with The Atlantic against trigger warnings. Lukianoff is the president of Individual Rights in Education and Haidt a social psychologist. Lukianoff and Haidt found the need to write the piece because of recent discussion on social media. Throughout the article, they sound shocked by the movement to, as stated, scrub campuses clean of words, ideas, and subjects that might cause discomfort or give offense. They mention their backgrounds, a professor speaking out against trigger warnings, protecting himself with a pseudonym, and state that, according to Haidt, policing speech may cause patterns akin to symptoms of depression and anxiety. Kate Mann, assistant professor of philosophy at Cornell University, wrote her New York Times article, Why I Use Trigger Warnings, in response to the previous piece. Mann has the tone of a concerned professor, though she mentions she is also a millennial, therefore part of the generation seeking trigger warnings. She claims that trigger warnings will help foster successful teaching and meaningful communication between teachers and students. Mann also explains that trigger warnings can help students prepare for class with proven anxiety management techniques. Though Mann is in support, she agrees with the critics that students need to be challenged in order to learn. Mann may feel that Cornell needs trigger warnings, but the University of Chicago sure doesn't think they do. In an article from the Washington Post, journalist Valerie Strauss writes passionately in agreement with the University of Chicago's rejection of trigger warnings on their campus in a letter sent to the class of 2020 before the school year began. Strauss explains that the distinguished university shouldn't have to state the obvious. She also states that trigger warnings are especially relevant in this time of racial issues and the acceptance of hatred in public speech. Next, yet another college educator weighs in on the matter in support. Aaron R. Hanlon, assistant professor of English at Colby College, is in strong support of trigger warnings and full of emotion. Hanlon wrote the piece in response to an article strongly against trigger warnings from the same publication, New Republic. Hanlon says while professors are prepared for tough material, students are real people with real histories and concerns, and that trigger warnings would make it so that the concerns of students are not dismissed or ignored by faculty. Though in support, Hanlon makes clear he only supports the use of trigger warnings so that teachers don't lose their jobs. To conclude, the debate over whether or not college administrators should implement trigger warnings is complex and ongoing, and fueled largely by the ability students and teachers are afforded by social media to express their opinions to a large audience and have their voice heard. Some support trigger warnings for the emotional well-being of students, while others simply don't want to lose their job, and those against think that their use would limit students' ability to learn.